continue to fortify us in the work because it's our goal that no more, none of this should continue happening. And also pray for all the work that we have done this year, because it's meaningful, because it's changing every time. They're meeting our care of those like me are HIV positive. Let us pray. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. So, Mr. Klotz.
Any public comment?
Yeah, was there any public comments? I'm sorry. Did somebody point a finger or no? Okay. Go ahead, David.
So everybody got minutes both right after the last meeting and again last week. I didn't get any changes. Any changes, corrections, additions? Rand?
I was here, and you have me absent.
Alright. Probably because you didn't sign the sheet. We'll change that.
David, you couldn't do business, could you?
Anything else? You might make that change.
Okay, thank you. So, as we all know, every one of us is here on this planning council for a limited period of time. Many of us have been doing this for quite a long time, and we've come to the end of our term of service, and some of us have been terminated out. And so, this is a point at which we really want to recognize the individuals who are sitting at this table, who have been here for many years, actively contributing, and who sadly, this will be their last meeting. Because as the rules of our bylaws say, you can serve no more terms and that's it. And then one of our members is leaving because she realizes that there's other priorities that must take precedence, and she's also done some great service with us. So I'd like to bring up the 6 people who are leaving at once. If you could come up behind me. Katrina. Matthew Bainey is going to be here in absentia. Essential, whatever. Thank you, David. Billy. Jan Hughes. Dr. Milano. And Saul. So I have my cheat sheet in front of me, but I don't think it's really necessary. So, I'm sure Jan will get. So, Katrina? So Katrina. Katrina is the one person here who is actually leaving us by her own choice. But I think I think while there's a lot of people who have realized that they couldn't be as active as they wanted to be, and they still stay on, they still try to come to meetings. Katrina is actually taking the smart road and is realizing that she's done some great service, she's contributed quite a bit. Every meeting you've been at, you've had some valuable stuff to add to. And she approached us and said, I think it's time for me to take a step back because I can't give 100%. I always thought you gave 150%, but I want to thank you for your time here in the Planning Council. You've been a real asset, and we will miss you. And of course, you can always reapply and come back. So, on behalf of the council.
On behalf of council, we'd like to present you with this plaque, and it says, with deepest appreciation, in honor of your hard work and dedication as a member of the HIV Health and Human Services Planning Council of New York. Thank you.
So, Mr. Bainey is not here, but I'll say a few words on behalf of Matt Bainey. So, Matt Bainey has a job which is really like 3 jobs. and yet he has still been able to be chair of a committee, PSRA, at a time in which we experienced reductions in our awards, and guided the council, along with our other retired person, Jan, through a very difficult but very laborious and very necessary process to really ask ourselves what our important priorities are. And so, while Matt Bainey cannot be here in person, I think we're all very grateful for Matthew being the table and Matthew's leadership, and really being able to steer the planning council into making really smart, deliberative choices about where our funding and our priorities are. So, thank you to Matthew.
I'd just like to add, in all the time I've been on the council as governmental chair since 2005, Matt has been one of the best chairs for the priority setting and resource allocation committee that I've experienced, and his dedication to volunteering on a committee that's quite difficult and complex and has very profound ramifications as far as making funding decisions that serve people directly. He has been very steadfast in participating at every moment, whether he's in an airport, waiting to get on a plane to go someplace, whether he's at a conference and taking a break between sessions, whether he's on the job and about to go into a meeting, whether he's out on Fire Island trying to enjoy himself. He's always called in, he's always been present, he's made every effort not to miss a beat. And so I'm sorry he's not here today, but you all know his work. And we will recognize him when the moment comes in the future.
Billy. So I have this list of committees you're on, and my only question is, what committee were you not on? So, Billy has been one of our staunch consumer advocates who has been at the seat of every table, every time, every meeting. And no matter whether it's raining, snowing, no matter where, no matter what your challenges are, you always manage to make every single meeting, always managed to contribute, and you even did the ungodly, boring, tedious, but important rules and membership committee, and you worked us through that. It's taking your day, girl. So, I want to thank you for being really an important part of this process, and it just seems like this council is going to be missing something without you being at the table at every meeting, every time. So, Billy, thank you for your time here. Thank you so much.
So here's a guy with a smile on his face all the time, and the hardships that he experiences getting up in the morning in bed and until he lays down in bed in the evening are beyond any of our imaginations. And it's his inspiration that helped us begin to work on helping people with disabilities that access our services, and deciding that we would be do everything that we could to provide the best services to people who are hearing impaired like myself, or in a wheelchair like Billy, or visually impaired like I am today. I just had cataract surgery the day before yesterday, so I'm seeing like half the room. But those disabilities are numerous, and we discovered in our exploration of this topic that there are numbers of people that access our programs that have disabilities. And it's through Billy and through Billy's eyes that many people in the committee that have been working on this began to see the challenges that we as people with disabilities face when we go into a setting that those of you who do not have those kinds of disabilities don't face. And so with his dedication, his motivation, his keeping to it, oftentimes we were distracted and thought that we would be putting things off. He continued to insist that we do this work. And now in August we'll be delivering in a special session a set of recommendations for people with disabilities, and it's all due to him. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for his service to the council. So Billy, on behalf of the Planning Council, We thank you.
Jan, I can't believe it's been this long, because I remember when you first started, you came to meet here and we sat down to lunch or breakfast, and I thought that was yesterday. And I think you've been a tremendous leader of the committee, and it's a very complicated process, and you seem to get, or at least you pretended to get, the lingo pretty quickly in priority setting, and really had a very level, even-handed approach to how to make decisions. And between you and Matthew, I don't think we're going to see that kind of leadership again at that committee, because I feel like you definitely, with Matthew together, were a great team in leading that committee. And so I want to thank you for your time on this council. And I know you have a full-time job as well. And so I know it's a lot of work and dedication you put into this. And not only do you get to be on it, that also means you're on the executive committee and the full council, so it's a lot of meetings for someone who's also trying to run an agency at the same time. So thank you very much.
So when a vacancy arose in the Priority Setting and Resource Allocation Committee, I approached Jan about serving as a co-chair, and I was afraid she was going to say no, because she's the number 2 person of a huge agency, and you think of people sitting at this table who are all working full-time and are busy in their lives to take the time out to even just be on the council or to participate in committee meetings is one thing. But to chair a committee is like a second job. And the committee that she chose to chair is the most difficult, the most complex committee of all. And we'll get to you later. So she has been a perfect pair with Matt, and they have worked very well together. And oftentimes when some of us on the committee think we should be going in one direction, and others on the committee think we should be going in another, both her and Matt were the centrists, and they got us to see which would be the best approach. So it's her kindness and her attention to detail and her reading before coming into the meeting and her making herself available on all the calls that we do before a meeting that I truly appreciate it as a chair, and we've all benefited from that work. So Jan, thank you very much.
Welcome to the call. So, Dr. Milano, Freddie, I've known you for too long. I hate to even say how long at this point, and you realize how old it takes you. But you've been a part of the planning for HIV services since the very beginning of this epidemic. And when you started your term on this council, I was like, oh, this must be his 17th time on this council, right? But you've been a warrior in this movement for a very long time. You've always had a lot to contribute to this. I find it hard to believe it's been 6 years you've been on this council already. Time flies. And I want to thank you for being here, being a part of this process. I know you also have a job that pulls you in a lot of responsibilities, and you've been at this table and you've been contributing, and thank you very much for your term here.
So Freddie, I'm sorry to see you go. You've really been a sunshine on this council, and you've enlightened many people here to the plight of transgender people who are HIV positive that you work so closely with in Queens and other places. But moreover, as a leader in the community, Freddie and I have been to many memorial services, and we remember very much leaders of the past and leaders of the present. And so we share that kind of longitudinal view of HIV, and we've come to understand that we're in a far better place today than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And part of that is because of people like Freddie. People are willing to volunteer, people are willing to show up, people are willing to be part of a state or county or city program, and it's all part-time, overtime work in Freddie's case. So Freddie, I miss you, but I know I'll see you around, and thank you so much for your service.
So this time I get to talk and the other person can't talk. So, you have been probably one of the most vocal consumer advocates at this table. And I have to say, well, I feel like I'm watching a plane that's circling, trying to land sometimes. It always lands on the right runway. And I always find that your thinking is out of the box and exactly where it needs to be in this council. And so, while many times I may have teased you about how long it took you to come to your point was often the one point in the room that nobody thought about that we all should have been thinking about. And so, you have a very talented, very gifted way of thinking and seeing the world. That you've done your best to make this council see things in ways that we're all like, oh yeah, we should have been doing that all along. So, your contributions to this council in many ways go far beyond where you think it has, and really made this council really just start thinking about the perspective of things from someone who doesn't know this world, doesn't speak this lingo, and trying to make sure that everybody at the table understands what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so, I know you're going on to lots of things, you're going back to school, but I, for one, I'm going to miss you on this council, even as I teach you about how long you talk.
So Saul, now I get to get back at you. I remember Saul when he came in for his interview to become a council member. And members of the panel, we ask a standard set of questions and then we have a conversation. And to every standard set of questions we asked, Saul's responses were completely different from anybody else's. Caught us so off guard. And I knew at that moment that this is the person that should be on the planning council. Now, there were times I regretted that decision. It was all for the good. Saul could be a bit of a pain in the ass at times. But he was willing to speak up and express his opinions, sometimes when it was out of sync with everybody else. But that's who we need on the council. We don't need people to sit on the council and nod their heads. We really need to have that exchange and that back and forth. And he would always spark those kinds of conversations. I'm so proud of him. The work that he's done in these 6 years, it's really been remarkable. And he's given a very strong voice to people living with HIV. I'm glad you're in grad school. I wish you the best of luck there. I wrote him a letter of recommendation, and that's why I'm sure he got in. But he's truly a star of the council, and we're going to miss him. Thank you so much, Saul. So here's a moment for you to speak, say a few words, say your goodbyes, and so we'll start with Saul.
So I did get over it. well, it's 4 years, I must say. It's getting to know you all, participating with you all in decision making. It personally goes for me, because I think it's better the attempt of mine to do work here. What really at the end means a lot to me is what you gave to me and made me using that to grow. And I can't believe that 6 years ago I would not imagine myself at this point. But it's all because of the 6 years I spent here. All this is a product of that. And thank you, Jan. You are an inspiration. And from the moment I met you, I did believe that in spite of all the contradictions, I did connect with what you wanted, with what your intentions were for the planning council. I did, from the very first moment I met you. And there's so many people to thank, but all of you, thank you. I couldn't be the person I am without those 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to serve. It's been really a learning experience, a great learning experience, a great experience working with everyone on the committee, on the council, but in particular with PSRA. Can't say enough for the support that we got in PSRA. None of it would have happened, of course, without substantial, ongoing, really diligent, detailed support from, in particular, David, who is always there with all the spreadsheets, all the explanations, reminders, helpful hints, you name it, lots of tools to really be able to digest some complicated information and then really help people to understand what the important pieces of that information are. And to Amber, who really sits through so many meetings and is always present and always able to come through with a really important perspective and important information that helps us in guiding us in our decision making. And then I don't think Gucci is here. I know Gucci has come to most of our meetings. He's been a great support, and everybody else. So thank you very, very much. It's been great.
I was just thinking when I moved here in January of 2015, I think I knew about all 5 people in New York City. And David and Daryl found me at some meeting. I don't even know or remember what it was, but they took a chance on a blue-haired, hippie, outspoken syringe exchange program director at the time. And it has been such a blessing and so meaningful to get to know all of you, and it's been such an amazing support in my 4 years here in the city. And I rolled on with Billy as the consumer co-chair, so it feels very sentimental that we are rolling off together. He's been an immeasurable support to me when I started. And I had a mentor once tell me that at a certain point, when it's time to move on so the next person's light can shine. So I'm really hoping that you guys bring on some beautiful, new, inspiring PLWHA to continue our work, and I know you will, and I trust the Planning Council, and I know our paths will cross again, and you may not have lost me entirely, so we'll see what happens.
First of all, I just want to thank Jan for believing in me. Because when he asked me, I was sort of hesitant about it. I was like, Jan, you think people are going to understand what I'm saying? I had had a stroke and I was recovering from the stroke. And he said, you'll be all right. And so I was like, well, it's worth a try. And I must admit, being the co-chair of the Consumer Committee, it's not just being a co-chair, but it's the members on our committee that get up every week. And not only come to our meetings, but come to every other meeting. When Jan said, when Matt said, what committee aren't you on? I was thinking about all the members of the Consumer Committee, like Randall, Paul, Lisa, Marie, Charmaine. It's our core members. There's so many of our core members that come to every one of these meetings. So it's like a kid coming to school every day because he's gonna play with his best friends. But they just don't come to the meetings and play. They come to the meetings and they have voice. And we elected this mantra that we put inside the Consumer Committee's pamphlet. It says nothing for us without us. And I must say, we live to that. We live with that, and it is embedded within us to do just that. So thank you so much.
I've been in this field for about 30 years, and the last 6 has been really blessing in the sense that learn again and again and again to see that partnerships can really work. Here in partnership with the Department of Health, with our consumers, our colleagues in here. And sometimes when we think that things are not going to work, and at the end of the cycle, we see we made it work. So despite, it's another good way to show to the rest of the city, the state, and the country, that despite that different
philosophy between government and communities, we can make it work. We have done it in here. I had been very lucky to have many friends here that are here today. And I also want to commend John for your leadership, Matthew and Bob Matthews. But I also want to mention David because you have been putting this together, keeping it together. It's difficult task. Yeah, yes, and always on time. But from the bottom of my heart, and in a way, I just got my energy renewed, and hopefully I'll have another 30 years to give to my community to until we get rid of HIV and AIDS. I hope to be fighting and I hope to be there because that belongs to all of us and that's that we all have to have. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I know we have a lot of other stuff.
Actually, no, we have one more thing to do. That's okay.
We have a lot of other stuff to do, but I just want to say that it's been a pleasure working with all six of you. I want to especially say to Jan and Matt Bainey that it's been an honor serving with you as co-chairs of PSRA. It's my favorite committee, and I love all my committees, but I have a special place in my heart for that. And it's, you know, it was just such a pleasure working with you, just incredible commitment and dedication. Katrina, I wish I was as smart as you. You're incredible. Freddie, you're such a compassionate, incredible person, so warm and you know, and loving. And Saul, you kept us on point, man. You are incredible. When you came in for the interview, I have to say, people lose membership from you. Like, I don't know, he doesn't know this world at all. I said, take a chance on it. Take a chance. And boy, did it work out, because you are phenomenal. And Billy, you are an inspiration. It made me think of the old, I don't know if I'm dating myself, but there's a song from the 70s called Billy, Don't Be a Hero. Where a girl was telling her boyfriend not to go off to fight in Vietnam because he'll get killed. Well, Billy, you went off and you fought, and you came back a hero. So, thank you.
So there's someone in this room who allegedly, I just use the word allegedly, is going to retire sometime soon from city service. This may be his last planning council meeting, but then again, he's been threatening to retire for about 2 years now. Rumor has it he actually has filed paperwork, and so after 175 years working for the city of New York, this may or may not be his last meeting. There might be one more, but Jan, you've been a pain in my ass, but I know every single time you've done it, it's been from the heart. You were the one that encouraged me to apply for the planning council and then run for community co-chair and run again. You've always been very supportive of me. You know the system in and out. You understand the implications of what federal policy impacts on the lives of people with HIV and can impact on the duty of this council. And you really have done a great job of making sure that people in this room understand why we're here, what's important, why we're voting for things, what is the true value and reason why we are all sitting here at this table. And I know I'm not going to let everybody here speak because we have lots of stuff to vote on, but you know, on behalf of the entire planning council, I really want to thank you for your term of service. It's really, you have been a stellar governmental chair running this process, making sure that things are kept on clockwork, and making sure that we're all doing it with the right heart and the right things in mind. And so, well, we all think you should retire, because it's been well deserved. we all know that you could probably do this for another 20 years and keep us all in check. So in the bottom of my heart from this council, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done here. I could think of no other person who is more suited for the job than you were. So we have two things. One, on behalf of the entire council, in front of the council, we wanted to thank you. So there's a tiny little $500 and something gift card from members of the council for your next travel to whatever exotic place you wish to go to. And I want to thank the council members who helped me to contribute. And then, David, do you want to present this on behalf of the...
Sure. So we've got a special plaque made up for Jan. I know you're going to be at the next meeting, which is October, and I'll probably totally lose it then, but I will say just on behalf of everybody here that you've been an incredible leader. And, this is just a small token of our appreciation. For 3 decades, you've been an advocate, and you've been a leader, and this council wouldn't be the same without you. This community wouldn't be the same without you. You've inspired so many people. And we still have 3 more months to slog through and slug it out on things, but I'm sure, at the end of the day, what can I say? We all appreciate you.
I'll just say a few things. I did want to say goodbye to the people that have been on the council this year, because I won't be seeing you again. I will probably be here until November, working out the details of retirement. I never thought retiring would be so difficult, but the paperwork is incredible, and when you're in government service, you have to have a plan, and it's a time frame and everything else. But it's all working out. Serving on the planning council just fell into my lap. And part of it came because I'm HIV positive. And the administration, the health department, the mayor at the time felt that it was important to have somebody in this position who was HIV positive, but also had some understanding of government service and government bureaucracy. When I came to New York, I came here as a news reporter, and I worked for a gay newspaper, the New York Native, and that was in 1979. And I worked as an entertainment news reporter, but we had a medical reporter, we had a business reporter, and each week we would hear stories of people who were dying of AIDS. And this was long before any appearance of that in the New York Times or other publications was published. So we began to write about that story. And I remember people around me becoming sick in 79 and 80 and 81. And it was just inevitable that our paper would take the lead in reporting those stories, and then they would be picked up by the mainstream media and become much more to life. I continued as a reporter, and then I went to work as a publicist, and then I was hired by the city to be a public information officer in 1987. And immediately I came to the mayor's office, and I began working with a small constituency office, LGBT constituency office, that at the time was managing a lot of HIV and AIDS issues. And every week I would be going to memorial services, and every week I would be reading letters from the mayor to the families of those who had deceased. Eventually I moved from the mayor's office to the health department when the Office of AIDS Policy was established. And I worked there until 1997 when David took my job. And I went to Harvard to get a degree in public policy because I felt I needed that training and that language. And I studied at the School of Public Health with Jonathan Mann. I also studied at the Kennedy School of Government, and I learned many things there. Eventually I came back to the Westchester County Health Department and then back to the City Health Department, and here I've been ever since. I never thought that I would live this long. I lived in the time, the 1980s. Those of you who've been watching Pose get a little bit of sense of that, when it was very dark. I lost my lover. I lost my best friend. I lost many, many colleagues. One day I went to a World AIDS Day event hosted by Housing Works where we read names. And so I went through all my address books and I came up with 83 names of friends that I had lost. And I read their names. And I kept thinking, you know, I'm next. And for those of us who lived during that time, there was no medications and there were no treatments, and we'd go to the hospitals, and all the stories you hear about food being left in the hallways and people being uncared for were true. And you just couldn't help to think that that would be your fate. But for some reason it wasn't, and I'm here. And I decided when I came to the health department that this was truly the work that I was meant to do. And I said to myself, I won't stop this work until there's a cure for AIDS. And unfortunately, I think that may not happen in my lifetime, but I do think that they're very close to that. And the beauty of all of this, if there is beauty in any of it, has been how the community has responded. And the reason that you're sitting here today is because of a dedicated group of activists, ACT UP New York, ACT UP Philadelphia, and ACT UP organizations across the country that came together in 1987 and 89 and 90 to fight for the rights of people living with HIV and to get federal legislation and get dollars coming into cities, and working with Ted Kennedy to write the Ryan Care Act. And a significant piece of that CARE Act was community planning. And that the people living with HIV, nothing about us without us was truly the motto, and that we needed to have a say in how those monies were distributed and what they were spent on and to whom they were intended to go to. And so this community planning body was created, and it's so unique. It's so individual in any piece of federal legislation that you have a body like this that has the power to decide how the money that comes into this city is best spent. And who's better to decide that than the people who are providing the services and receiving the services and overseeing the services. So I hope this is the 29th session of this body. People like you have been sitting in this room for 29 years and making decisions. And in that period of time, we developed a continuum of care for people living with HIV in New York and the Tri-County region that far surpasses almost any other city in this country. And people that come to New York who have HIV and have AIDS, they know that. And with an HIV positive council member, local law 2 was passed and HASA was established, and now there are 40,000 people living with HIV in their own apartments. No other place in the country has those kinds of protections, and much of that has arisen from meetings like these. So it's been an honor to sit here and watch you do your work. I'm just the guy behind the curtain. I have a remarkable staff, Melanie and David and Daryl and Jose and Kimberly and Judith. We fight with each other all the time, but they take on so much work that it's incredible. And working with Graham and Amber on the other side to get the data that we need, to get the reports that help sustain us, that you read and study, it's like a well-oiled machine. Yes, we have disagreements. Yes, we would like to see things done differently. But for the most part, everything that we do comes together in the end in a meeting like this. And I can't say enough about my staff. Melanie has taken on, she has 2 committees and 3 subcommittees. She basically has 5 committees that she managed this year. And David has taken over while Daryl's been on leave. And he manages priority setting and the executive committee, the full planning council, the rules of membership committee. I mean, way more work than a single individual should be managing. And he does it without complaint, and he does it on time, and he's accurate and precise, and it's just incredible to work with people like this. Jose, I can't thank enough for his outreach and attending every CAB meeting he can possibly get his foot in the door. We wouldn't have 5 true transgender people in this council if it weren't for him. We're about to appoint 2 more transgender people and a non-binary person to next year's planning council because of his work. He's out in the streets every single day, and it's an amazing job that he does. So, that said, for those I'm not going to see again, I'm going to say farewell. For some of you, I'll see you again at the beginning of the next session for a short term. Hopefully we'll have an idea of who the next governmental chair will be. But you've been the wind beneath my wings. And what's kept me going in those very sad moments, and we've lost a number of council members. To me, that's really a difficult thing. Has been the work that you've done. And I'm just so amazed that we're so close to a cure. And we have PrEP, and the numbers are falling, and people are getting the messages, and each one of you is an advocate for that. Whether you know it or not, you are. So, long story short, I really do appreciate everything that you've done. I'm looking at this room, I can say thank you for half an hour to each of the faces that I see here. But it comes from a place of love. And that's the beginning of everything. And I think all of you feel that when you contribute to this work. So thank you, and I think we need to get on with the business of the day.
I'm gonna let one person only actually speak, because this room, we got things to do. I'm sorry, Janet, we can't allow everybody here to say goodbye to you, but so Graham, and make it short, please, because I'm sorry, we'll have votes to do. I gotta be the time master here.
This is part of the grantee report, so that's clear. Jan, I thought so hard about how I want to appreciate you today. We are on opposite sides, but on the same side in so many different ways. And you have been such an inspiration for this council and for the Ryan White New York EMA and other EMAs across the country. Without your leadership, we wouldn't have put in place trauma-informed care. Without your leadership, we wouldn't have increased the person-centered services that we have in care coordination. Without your leadership, you wouldn't have inspired us to do better to meet the needs of those co-infected with hepatitis C. And this year, without your leadership, we wouldn't have better understood the needs of those who don't have access to our services because they're disabled. And I see that. And I want to thank you so much for that. But personally, you have inspired me. I can't, when the planning council is out, I feel like my work is flat. This is where we know that people's lives are front and center. And that's because of your leadership. You slow us down to consider every decision. You slow us down to really think about how do we affect the lives of people who are not in this room. And that is incredibly important for us to do the work that we're doing. And you have helped me grow so much in this position, and I don't think I've said that enough to you. And you've helped me to be better prepared to think through what my arguments, to think through difference in opinion and consider other opinions, and that's made me a better person. And thank you for that. I have something some more inspiration for you, which is a book of poetry by an immigrant poet from Canada who grew up in Sri Lanka, who writes poetry for today that I think will inspire your continued leadership. And I want to thank you for that. All right, let's get to business.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone. Jen, the card as well as the contribution came from this entire council, so we really want to thank you for your leadership there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, moving on with business, since we do have activities to vote for today, we're going to move on to, we got our grantee report, right, sir?
There's a couple things that I think I should cover.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do it quickly.
Okay.
So there's a call for abstracts for the Power of QI that's out right now, and I'll be sure that people are aware that that is out. The link is in your grantee report. The other thing that is incredibly important is that the grantee worked with Prevention to submit a CDC grant for planning to end the epidemic, which will be a project that we work with you all and the HPG over this next year. By the end of next year, we will have a revised plan to end the epidemic that will require your involvement and concurrence. And so in the fall, we'll give a better timeline so you have a sense of your role and how it's going to roll out, but I want to be sure that you are aware of that and your role in that. I also wanted to say that finally, the Bureau of HIV Prevention and Control is no longer called the Bureau of HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control. We are now just the Bureau of HIV. So we've gotten rid of the big government control part, and that we've gotten rid of the AIDS, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. So less stigma in how we approach our work. So that's another exciting announcement. And that's all I have for now. The rest of the tidbits are in your written document in your folder. Thanks.
So we are now going to do, Sir John, please don't start his accolades process. Is that what you're going to do? Go ahead, John.
Okay, I will start then. On the last page, you have LGBTQI. Why are we not using the new one? TRNBNC. Transgender, intersex, non-binary, and non-conforming. That's the whole alphabet.
Because this is what was written in the procurement for that, and it's more inclusive than the persons of trans experience and non-binary and non-conforming. It also includes LGBTQ folks.
But this is story tells. Would you want to get their stories?
Yes.
So, we are on the assessment of the administrative mechanism section of the agenda. Graham is doing this, or are you doing it, Amber?
I am.
Okay.
We got you for a full house.
Do you want a microphone here?
I'll just go sit next to Julie.
I took a shower today too.
Here, Amber, come here. Sit next. You guys can all come to the meeting at the same time. All right. Okay, so if everyone will pull out this big, ugly spreadsheet here. Oh, I forgot my notes. Okay, sorry.
I'm just getting your notes, just to set the context for this. We are required by environmental legislation, as one of our core duties, to do what's called assessing the administrative mechanism. That means seeing how well the Department of Health and the National Contract of Public Health Solutions is doing in implementing our priorities and allocations. So we get quarterly spending reports. This is the fourth quarter closeout report for the 2018 fiscal year, which ended on February 28th, 2019. So after you've seen these for the second and third quarters, and after Amber goes through the spending report, the spending data, we'll go through what's called the assessment administrative mechanism, which is a table that just kind of summarizes the work we've done over the course of the year to assess the performance of the grantee and that contract.
I think I left them in the printer. All right, it's fine. Luckily I did this for EC, so, yeah. All right, so just to orient everyone to the sheet. The sheet is, on the front of the sheet is the New York City base. On the back, we have the Tri-County portion of the portfolio, which is all funded from base. And then we have the MAI portfolio, which is all funded programs in New York City. And then we have the administration and then the total award. So I will start with the good news, which is our excellent spending this year. It is another record year. At the end of the year, we had only about $241,641 in base spending and $4 in MAI. Thank you to the providers who really paid attention to the services they were delivering and will proactively work with us and with Public Health Solution to either address performance issues or to work with us to let us know that they would not be spending those funds and that we could send them over to other higher performing programs. So just starting out with the ADAP, which is row 1 on that front of the page. So as per your spending plan, we shifted, we spent the entire carryover in ADAP. You will see that there were modifications upwards of almost $3 million. So after we do reprogramming, anything that cannot be reprogrammed within the portfolio other than ADAP often is sent to ADAP, and this year was no different. We sent a net of actually $2.9 million, because when we get to the MAI, you'll see we had to do some balancing between the two portfolios. So we have to report to the penny on how we spend our base money and how we spend our MAI money. And so sometimes we move money around in those areas. And in particular, ADAP is where we often make the changes because most of their clients are eligible for MAI, and it's just a little easier in that portfolio. They, as usual, didn't bill us in the first quarter. They did bill us in the second and third for very small amounts, and then billed us for the bulk in the fourth quarter. And they are 100% expended. Moving down into, I'm not going to give significant detail on each. I'm going to focus on the areas that may be of interest to you, but please, if you do have questions about anything I don't cover, I'm happy to answer. But for the sake of time, I'll focus on the most probably noteworthy. So one thing I do want to note, so if you look at non-medical case management, we have 2 service models within that. One is the support for recently incarcerated individuals. The second is our general MCM program. Both of them ultimately had money reprogrammed out of those categories to the tune of almost $400,000. One thing that you may be curious about is how the first type, the currently incarcerated individuals type, billed mostly in the fourth quarter. That was a contracting issue. So that contract is part of a master MOU between the department and the contractor that has a bunch of services, not just ours, and that whole thing had to be rewritten this year. So there was a slight delay. So they've been billing us throughout the year for services, but then took a lump payment at the end of the year. And moving down into, and the other thing to note with general MCM, a lot of this underspending is due to a contractor that had performance issues and actually ultimately was terminated. And we presented that information to PSRA during our 2019 spending plan. as a modification to permanent carrying costs in that service category. Moving down, you'll see that transitional care coordination overspent by about $420,000. Care coordination is underspent by about 1.1 million, including both reprogramming as well as underspending in column J. Something to note about the care coordination contracts is that that was rebid and new contracts started mid-year last year. So this includes spending sort of ramp up period during the new procurement as well as the ramp down period of the old, because those new contracts actually started in May. As we continue to move down, mental health services is underspent by about $500,000. What's actually very interesting in that service category is that about half the contractors are overperforming, about half of them are underperforming, including one that is significantly underperforming. So it's not a sort of across the board thing, but a contractor by contractor thing. And we have actually presented this information before the council, but this is one of the service categories that we'd be interested in looking at the model, given changes to Medicaid in the next few years, just to make sure that this is a model that's still meeting our needs. Doesn't have to be done next year, but we should definitely look at it in the next year or two. Harm reduction, actually it's a very similar issue. They're underspent by almost $500,000. A lot of just slight underspending, totally reasonable, and then one contractor who is significantly underspent. And we've been providing extensive TA as well as contract oversight with that contractor, and continue to hope that there will be improvements, but we may come back to the council next year with some modifications and carrying costs for that category as well, if that ends up being an issue that cannot be resolved. So housing's a little tricky because it looks like they're underspent by about $500,000, which I'm sure makes people go, but there's a housing crisis. When we get to MAI, you'll see that we actually moved money between the two portfolios, and this was really a matter of balancing. So the other portfolio was enhanced in MAI by about $300,000, leaving most of this underperformance in the housing placement category, which again we've talked about here. With record low vacancies, it's just really hard to house people, and housing placement is looking for permanent, safe, secure, and affordable housing for folks, and that's just really hard to come by. Early intervention services. This is just sort of a very normal amount of underspending, although again, those contracts were also relatively new in the last few years. Legal. You're probably looking at this going, wait, legal always overspends. PSRA actually enhanced this category last year pretty significantly. And so they're actually overperformed what their original allocation was before the permanent enhancement. It should also be noted that one of the contractors in there had to be reassigned. So there was a period where it was almost like a new contract as the contract moved from one contractor to the other. Family stabilization, same sort of story. You're used to seeing record overspending here. This contract, group family contracts was also enhanced permanently in 2018 over their 2017 allocation in recognition of those regular overperformance. And then finally, health education risk reduction was just routine underspending across the portfolio. Are there any questions about New York City police funding?
I have one question. How can we have 167K in unexpended funds, but then have 100.8% in expended?
Oh, because that includes the carryover. So there's actually $400,000 in carryover. So that's over the original allocation and includes carryover, although it shouldn't include carryover. So that was just a mess up in the form and will be fixed. So moving to Tri-County. Tri-County contracts, remember in 2018, were still cost-based contracts, so they didn't have the opportunity to overperform in the way that the New York City portfolio does. That will be changed for next year, so that pretty much that entire portfolio has moved to performance-based other than a few service categories. And so next year they'll have the opportunity to under and overperform in the same way. A couple of things to note. The housing portfolio, so their enhancement came very late in the year. And so while they worked to ramp up performance, they still were underspent. And in their ramp up, they also identified a lot of new clients. They're actually now over-enrolled. As many of you remember, we actually approved a carryover request to enhance them one time as they sort of figure out what their new threshold is, and then we'll come back to the council if they need a permanent enhancement. Moving down, the rest of it was just sort of routine underspending. For example, medical case management, $56,000. It's across 10 providers, so it's a very small amount per provider. And I think that's all for Tri-County, unless there are any other questions. Great. And so as we move
So you're sort of telling us, council, on the housing category, we may need to at some point permanently increase their allocation.
Yeah, but it looks like we're working our housing units, providing them with some technical assistance to look at who these folks are, what other resources they have, will there be attrition, or is this sort of the industry sort of in drumming up, getting an enhancement, and finally having slots for the first time in a long time really drum up new folks.
Before you go through some process of vetting people and seeing if there's other sources, obviously if there's another payer, there's another payer.
Right.
But the language to me also sounds like you could be encouraging people to find other sources for the program. So think of coming back as council first before you start weeding people off the program.
Oh, no, clients, it'll always be a priority on clients. They'll also have the opportunity for enhancements as this moves to a performance-based portfolio, although that is a cost-based one, but it is a place where we can move funds to. And so we'll work with them over the next year, and we'll have, by the fall, we should have more information.
Because I always tell this kind of something, their allocation is based on their percentage of people living with HIV, but there's nothing in the statute that says we can't go above and beyond that.
So it's actually not anymore. We've locked it in at a level acknowledging sort of
the uneven distribution of resources and the lack of certain programs.
the fact that they don't have HASA.
Right.
The fact that they don't have HASA, and there's also just a bit of a efficiency in having a large system that they don't benefit from in the same way that we do. So there are no
Was there any other?
Paul, John.
I just wanted to make a comment that people who live in Westchester County do not, or the Tri-County, they don't have HASA. They don't have the programs that we have, and housing in the Tri-County is so limited and scarce. So those that are staying, this is going to be a very important discussion that we potentially will be having next term.
John?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. We're about to take a vote to save $1,443,228 on care coordination, transitional care coordination. And I'm going through the year-to-date expenses, and I don't see $1,443,228 there. Or is it like hiding? I'm not a mathematician, so I can't.
So it's 1.2 million in base, and then another
200 and change.
100 and some thousand in MAI. So between the two, it comes out to 1.4. So transitional care coordination, like MAI, or like transitional care coordination, has both base funding on row 9 as well as MAI funding on row 52. So you have to add the two together.
9 and 52.
Jeff?
I have a similar question. When you were talking about medical case management, I think you said that there was an underspending of $56,000. Did I get that right?
In medical case management or in care coordination?
I think it was care coordination, but either, whatever the category was, I don't see that number anywhere, and I was just wondering where you're getting that number from.
What was the number?
I think you said it was 56,000?
There's 366,000
In,
in MAI.
I haven't done MAI yet. So the 52,000, row 40. The medical case management, 56,000.
Oh, for Tri-County.
For Tri-County.
56,115? So
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so and so in our total base portfolio, we spent something got messed up with this number. Oh, so we only had underspending of about $167,000 total across the whole portfolio of base contracts. That's row 46 all the way in column. But it is over 100% because it includes the carryover, which was fully expended. So moving into MAI, you'll see that we reprogrammed about $72,000 out of ADAP MAI to balance between the MAI portfolio and the base portfolio. Moving into medical case management, transitional care coordination overperformed by about $10,000. Care coordination, same issue with MAI care coordination as basic care coordination, because those two were rebid at the same time and the contracts went offline and came online at the same time. As many of you may remember, there were a couple of different, there was a staggered implementation. We did an analysis and there was no difference spending-wise, underspending or overspending between the different reimbursement types during that period. And then in early intervention, again, so remember we're balancing between the two. So these contracts were enhanced by $100,000, while the base ones were reduced by about $200,000. And again, that's balancing between the portfolios. For people who aren't familiar, the way that MAI contracts are selected is that they have to the agency has to be located in zip codes that have been identified as areas that have disproportionately impacted by HIV amongst people of color. So zip codes where people of color live and where places like Central Brooklyn, the Bronx, etc., Harlem, and we've pinpointed certain zip codes. But the dollars between the contracts have to sort of match. And then housing services were enhanced in this service category by $320,000, and most of that money actually came from the base portfolio. Overall, the New York EMA services spent 99.8% of all of their funds and were only unexpended by $167,000. In administration, so base administration includes grantee administration, planning council funds, as well as our administration at Public Health Solutions. That was unexpended by approximately 20, actually, if you count the reprogramming that we did, we were unexpended by about $35,000. MAI was fully expended. MAI administration includes both grantee administration as well as our administration costs at Public Health Solutions. Quality management by legislation, we can use up to $3 million. So that covers both quality management contracts as well as quality management staff, and it was only unexpended by about $44,000, $45,000. And the total award again was only had $241,600 and some dollars unspent. And you can see in the bottom, for those of you who know, for those who don't, formulas, our base award comes as both supplemental and formula. You are not allowed to carry over any of your supplemental funds, so we spend that first, which is why it was fully expended by the end of the second quarter. And then, again, we're not allowed to have any carryover, any of our carryovers, so that was also fully expended in the fourth quarter, leaving us with a very small amount of MAI and formula funds unspent. We will submit our carryover request as per your approved plan. We've actually submitted our FFR, so this has already been sent to the federal government ahead of schedule. Thank you to our fiscal staff, barring Marlene and Karen, and we will submit our carryover. Are there any other questions?
Anybody? Sure, Mr. Clark. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Oh, FFR? The federal financial report? Yes, so every year at the end of the year we submit to HRSA, it's called the federal financial report, or the FFR. You can imagine having heard what the acronym stands for, why I call it the FFR. And it has been submitted.
So Amber, thank you so much for that reading. People Public Health Solutions, this is really remarkable, and so you deserve a round of applause for our
Okay, so the next thing in your packet, you'll see this medium-sized sheet that has a couple of blue bars across the top.
Do you need to vote on this? No.
No, what we vote on is the next thing.
Oh,
so while the council's going to be on recess in August and September, Amber and her staff and myself and other people are going to be working on a grant application. And one of the things we need to document in our grant application, and we get points off if we don't document it, is that we have completed our assessment administrative mechanism. So this next sheet is basically a summary of the quarterly reports that we've been getting throughout the year and today's closeout report. So this is what we'll need to vote on, and I'll just go through it really quickly, but basically it explains, it summarizes the reports we've been getting on a regular basis from the grantee, also known as the recipient. So the report's laid out in 4 broad categories. The first one is executed contracts and renewals, and you'll see the column all the way on the right is the findings. As Amber explained, we got the award in 3 parts this year, but they were still able to execute and renew all the contracts on a timely basis. And we're able to work with all the providers to make sure that they didn't overcommit, not knowing at the beginning of the year if we get full award. And all uncommitted funds resulting from contract negotiations or any terminations will be reprogrammed according to the Planning Council's reprogramming plan. The second item is procurement. Last year, the care coordination RFP went out. The successful applicants were reported to us in the Planning Council meeting in May 2018, we were fully informed of the awards, and the RFP process was all done in a timely manner. Subcontractor payments, subcontractors were paid in a timely manner within 30 to 60 days of receipt of a complete and accurate expenditure report. And then spending, which is basically what Amber just reported to you, that expenditures were reported to us on a quarterly basis, that spending continued at actually record high rates. The closeout was only after closeout, only $241,000 left unobligated, which will be the carryover into next year. That's 0.3% of the grant, a $95 million grant, which is outstanding. And that summarizes the assessment administrative mechanism. So if there are any questions about that, we're happy to answer that, and then we'll need a motion to accept this and vote.
Motion to accept?
Yes. So to give context to all this work that we're doing, I'd like to tell the story as to where the Planning Council has come from since the Finance Committee started in 2003. It was my first Planning Council meeting. I had just fresh off the boat from Guyana, and I came to the Planning Council. And I've never been to the most disruptive meeting I've been to in my life. The Planning Council had a $14 million underspending, and they had 3 hours to plan it. People were screaming, jumping on counters, and I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. This is what they do here. And so the Finance Committee was born on that day. And since then, I have been involved in this council. I have seen the distrust of government and the body, from the mayor's office of its policy to this, to come all the way. And where this Planning Council has come over the last 16 years in terms of spending and the record number of spending, it is because of all the work on it. And those people who stood up, like John and myself, when information was very hard to get, but it's that collective work that we can celebrate all of this that we're doing. And there were a lot of stuff that were done over the years, step by step, like moving money across categories to underspending to the ADA. And I think this is what we've done in a model now. And this is why our money is being spent. And I'm glad to move the motion to adopt the certain mechanism.
John?
It sounds like a nightmare. If we're going to be voting on the transitional care, we're basically getting rid of it.
We're not there yet. One step at a time, John. You're jumping ahead.
No, but I'm saying, why would it be here? Why would we be voting to say, okay, so it's here?
We're not.
We're still in the middle of passing and improving the administrative mechanism.
There's 3 votes today, John. We're only on the first one.
Okay, right. We just need a second to the motion.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the administrative mechanism? So, all in favor of supporting it as it has been presented? Opposed? All right, then it has been approved. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda, 2 items actually, are the essence of the work of the Integration Care Committee. And the first piece is we're going to be discussing the elimination of a service category and ultimately the improvement of another. And I'll let Danielle, you going to do that on this? Along with
Good afternoon, everyone. We have our presentation pulled up. You also have a paper copy in your packet. So first we're going to talk about ending the Transitional Care Coordination Service Directive, which is our recommendation from this committee's work this year. So transitional care coordination is for homeless or unstably housed Ryan White clients. The TCC service model was developed in 2011 to address the housing crisis among our clients. At the time, 4% of persons living with HIV in New York City use the homeless shelter system. And the prevalence of using the adult shelter system among HIV/AIDS individuals, WHs, was 2 times as high as the prevalence of the New York City adult population. The model was based on a model called the critical time intervention. And this was a model.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Whoever's on the phone, we can hear all sorts of very interesting noises. Can everyone on the phone please mute yourself unless you're planning to talk. Thank you. Go ahead, Danielle.
Okay, so it's based on the critical time intervention and it's sought to improve homelessness for unstably housed individuals by facilitating access to care, housing services, and other social support services. I think, this is the best way to talk about it. The critical time intervention was based on work, a model that had been successful with persons who were struggling with substance abuse. Is that accurate? Melanie, can you fact check me?
The critical time intervention was originally designed to address the needs of people who were having a psychotic break. And so the idea is that if you can quickly stabilize someone who's having a psychotic break, when you do that intervention, it stops things from kind of ricocheting or spiraling out of control. And so the idea is that if someone becomes homeless and you can quickly get them housed, then yeah, you stop a lot of other repercussions from that. But it doesn't quite work, particularly in our urban landscape, which is very, very rarely have vacancies that are affordable.
Thank you. So the TCC provides linkages to housing services, HIV primary medical care, and case management. So here's our process. We reviewed all the previous presentations to other committees, including the Assessment Committee and PSRA. We reviewed new grantee presentations and service model comparisons. We also met with providers and clients from both transitional care coordination and short-term housing. So here are the issues with the TCC model. It's time limited to 1 year and that lacks flexibility. The majority of clients already have primary care physicians and case managers, and some don't need case management at all. Clients are enrolled, the clients that are enrolled are mainly homeless and or unstably housed and enroll specifically for housing services, referral and linkage. However, the model doesn't provide housing assistance directly. Care coordination can the care coordination can require significant time and energy, particularly when there is substance use or mental health issues going on. But this isn't a strong focus of the model. TCC often leverages on-site housing programs funded by Ryan White or HACWA to effectively house the clients. TCC programs inadvertently find themselves in competition to bring in clients. And the short-term housing service, which we also fund, provides almost identical services, but has the added advantage of being able to house clients. So after a careful review, we feel that short-term housing can add the targeted outreach service that TCC currently conducts. So, this isn't a model without merit. The clients expressed an appreciation for it, and as well as their frustrations. But specifically, they said that providers go above and beyond to facilitate and ensure that clients are stable. Housing clients remains a challenge in our landscape, and care coordination requires significantly more time than the program model acknowledges of the staff. TCC is sometimes in competition with short-term housing, which is an unintended consequence of the model due to the duplicative services. So our recommendation is to discontinue the TCC service model. It's currently funded at $1,443,220. We recommend that the TCC service model end and ask that the PSRA consider moving the TCC funding allocation in whole to the housing services category to increase short-term housing. With the additional funds, housing will enhance and strengthen the current service model to provide additional outreach, housing, and care coordination and client stabilization services.
Are there questions? I'll start with Jeff.
How many contracts does this amount include?
5,
Lisa?
4 of which also have short-term housing contracts co-located.
How many of the organizations have overlapping short-term housing?
4 of the 5 organizations that have TCC contracts also have short-term housing contracts. 1 does not.
Lisa?
Yes, could there be a little more elaboration just so that I can have clarity on what is considered short-term housing? Speaking from someone who was formerly homeless and a client of services, that's a little anxiety creating because you don't feel safe and comfortable that someone is working towards your long-term stability because it's set as short-term housing. And that being said, can this TCC service model add increased linkages that really focus on short-term to permanent housing?
Well, just so you know, in Ryan White, we can't use the word permanent housing. It's always considered short-term.
So we talked about this a lot. If there's that restriction, Ryan was only funded short-term. The short-term housing model, and I'm sure Graham can speak to this as well, it's a 2-year model, but they never kick anyone out. And in many cases, they work, the agencies will work to transfer leases. And so it's called short-term, this is in regulation, but it's not ever kicking people out.
Other questions? Paul?
So, just to do the last night. So I see that the recommendations are basically about the funding, meaning you eliminate it and you have more money. Were there any other things that?
Actually, they're going to recommend moving it to the housing category, it's not eliminating it. They're not, in terms of funding, they're not eliminating the funding, they're just asking to move the money over.
Again. That's not the, again.
Like I said, your helicopter's not circled and landing yet, so.
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying that it's not just about moving the money, it's about moving the most valuable services from the model and making sure that they're represented in other areas, right, Saul?
Correct.
And so what we found when we did, if you don't mind, and I just want to say that PSRA does not do the most complicated or complex work, as is evident.
Not your day.
I'm going to ignore your comments, man. Yeah, exactly. See? Anyway, we all participate in this process. Anyway, so what we found is that the only service that housing is not doing in the same way as TCC is the enhanced outreach. And so the recommendation, which you see, enhance and strengthen the current service model to provide additional outreach, housing and care coordination and client stabilization services. But when it comes down to it, and you look at both models side by side, they are doing the same thing, except that housing can actually house people. And so that money can be put into actually putting someone in an apartment or funding a housing specialist that can find apartments, which in this landscape is incredibly difficult work. And so because of the duplication, we came to the grantee has been waiting for us to get to this conclusion for a really long time. But they didn't really, they were also kind of not presenting the information in a way that we could understand. But we recommend that we just enhance housing and hopefully, because we recommend the enhancement of short-term housing because that model and the TCC model are so similar and do similar work, and because we found that there are just several dysfunctional aspects of the TCC model that don't serve our clients.
So this is what my intent was. That this that you explained should have been written here in this clarifying. It's very broad in the sense that you say, when I read it, with additional funding, what you'll do is enhance and strengthen the current service, provide additional outreach, housing care. Yet the statement doesn't link that this comes from the acknowledge that as we're looking at TCC, this was the good things about TCC, that you're adding to short term. So this linkage, so it doesn't seem or appear to be that somehow TCC was scrapped and nothing was learned. You don't only add, you have to state it, you have to say it. So some of us who do not know what you did, it becomes clear that the work you did was take something good that was in TCC and you're using that to enhance and add. But that statement is not said there. It doesn't show that that's the work that you did.
Lisa?
Just one more question. So, understanding that coming with homelessness does come some mental health issues and substance abuse issues. And I come from a housing first model, which is why me and all my fabulousness is sitting at this table now, because stabilizing and putting people in housing rather than requiring them to be in a substance program or mental health treatment so you can work on things once they're stable, this supports that type of housing.
All right, funded housing does in this EMA.
And we talked about that to a great degree, like housing is health and how important it was. Like the TCC providers did talk about the importance of like that being a barrier and coordinating all the services they need. So this other model actually links them with places more effectively while managing those other components.
Yeah. I'd like to ask if there's a timeline for clients to be in the TCC program, can they transfer over to another agency and continue if they're by chance they can't continue in that one agency? Can they be transferred to another agency?
Graham?
And keep their apartment? Like sharing, this is my apartment, I have the lease, I'll speak to the landlord to transfer it to your name, and now you can continue with the client until.
Well, transitional care coordination, that's one of the problems with the model, is that it actually doesn't directly house anyone. It links people to housing resources that are addressed in another contract, in another program, in another service. So the elimination of these contracts isn't tied to anyone's payment of their housing. Does that make? Did I answer your question?
No, you didn't answer my question. I understand that it's temporary. I understood, and there's an issue with temporary, because if there's no permanent housing, we can't find anything. So can I, if that client is in my program for 2 years, according to what it said for 2 years, can I then call Housing Works and say, I have a client who's been in my agency or in a house, in our apartment or in another apartment, can you take over the lease? And so that client doesn't lose that housing, because it's the stress of losing housing that clients are going to.
Under the housing program, that is able to happen sometimes, but not consistently, because it matters how the program is working with their housing resource in that program at that agency.
Can we develop an RFP to do that?
It depends on many resources outside of Ryan White, which we don't have control over, and many policies outside of Ryan White that we don't have control over. I mean, we're all experienced the weirdness of housing in New York City, and it's not linear, and it's not clear, and that's part of what makes it so difficult for people to secure stable housing. So I brought this issue up with Pam a few months ago because it was something that came out of the committee, and there are ways that can happen sometimes when they set up the lease in that way, but it can't happen all the time. But I can say that the work of the supported housing staff includes helping them to transition to long-term housing so that they at the very least are able to transition to long-term housing, and that 2-year limit isn't finite. No one is asked to leave at the end of those 2 years if they haven't secured other housing. So it's a guideline, but not a rule. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's.
And so Barry, and then Carmel, and then Jeff.
I have two questions. One is, I guess the first one is on the closeout report that Amber presented before. Transitional care coordination is the only one that actually had a reprogramming up. And I'm just wondering how we reconcile that and eliminating the program. I'm not arguing that it's not wrong, that's not right to eliminate the program, but it does seem like a disparity. And the second thing is that I remember, I think in the last PSRA meeting, when we were discussing what if we had a grant raise the next year, and how much would we allocate increase for housing? And I recall that it was 600,000 or 800,000. And so, if I'm remembering correctly, that was kind of an optimal figure that might be needed. So I'm just raising that because this is 1.4 and does it need to fully go to housing if we were told in another forum that that amount might not be needed.
So, can I respond? In regards to the performance, the issues that you'll see in the presentation aren't about performance, it's about the model that we procured and the challenges of that model. There's no doubt that these programs worked very hard to do what they could with the model that they were asked to provide services under, but the fact is they never were able to actually provide the housing, and they competed with the housing program at their agency, which is not in the best interest of the clients. So that's the first piece. What was your second question?
So you're saying that we've actually been overpaying them for not doing right?
They're not overpaying them. We pay them for services, and we pay them a fee for that service, and they have been providing that service. But that service, when you look at the model, isn't the most effective service we can provide. And so moving that service to short-term housing, this was your other question, will allow the existing programs to provide more support services, more services around financial literacy, more help for those who are managing issues of substance use and mental health issues to help them stabilize and maintain longer-term housing.
Yeah, so two things. One is the way that the program charges the grantee is different from how other programs charge, and so they can spend more money and then be compensated in the carryover. So that doesn't indicate whether or not there's a need for services. There's definitely a need for services. The second thing is that the recommendation that you received from PSRA, which says another 600,000 to 800,000 would probably be sufficient, possibly only applies to the current housing model without the strengthened outreach. So there's that to consider, and also we're not debating whether the PSRA is going to do that in the fall. We're just saying that we think that the best way to strengthen this service of actually housing people is to move that money into housing. Oh, and the other thing is that we are going to be examining the issue of serious mental illness in the fall, and so that actually looks at how to manage these populations so that we're doing the very best to retain them in care. And that is going to be happening in the fall. So short-term housing the whole housing portfolio is going to be looked at.
So there's 2 more speakers in the queue. I'm just reminding people of the time, which is part of my job, it's 4:22, and we still have another vote to take. So after these 2 gentlemen, we might need to move on.
So for the TCC contractor that doesn't have a short-term housing contract, is it located in a geographic area that's covered by a short-term housing contractor? And if not, then what's the plan to fill that gap?
Can I answer this? Yeah. There are other short-term housing providers in the Bronx that will be able to provide the service. Yeah?
When we talk about short-term housing, what is the maximum amount of money that, there is a maximum amount of money that can be paid for that particular apartment, right? Based on the size of the apartment and the size of the family unit.
So you're talking about the fair market rent, which is set by the federal government, but in New York, with the understanding that the fair market rent, which has gone down in recent years, does not adequately cover most apartments. It's a constant negotiation with the housing unit and landlords in order to keep people housed, get people housed and keep them housed.
So would it be possible to use any potential extra money like this to put into a fund that can raise the level of...
We're bound by the fair market rent as well. We're runway and we are a federal program.
How much stuff with the same rules as well?
Any further discussion? Saul, thank you for your observation. I sat through all of these meetings. There were many passionate arguments for TCC, for short-term housing. Excuse me. A number of clients came and spoke, and providers spoke, and it took the committee some time to work their way through this decision. Short story is that the best elements of transitional care coordination have been saved, and they will be integrated into short-term housing. The other elements of transitional care coordination that were more difficult to provide or not as productive as one would have liked to have seen won't be a part of that story anymore. So we'll be moving more dollars into short-term housing, which is a good thing, and we'll be enhancing that particular service model with these additional elements. And as we begin the next session, housing will be our focus. All of the housing subcategories will be the focus of the Integration and Care Committee next year. And this has stimulated part of that interest. So if there's no further discussion, I'd like to move to a vote.
Well, yes, you can speak during the motion. Let the motion be introduced. Go ahead.
So I moved to approve this recommendation for transitional care coordination services.
Second, okay. Definitely the same point from the committee. So now we're in a motion. Are there any questions on the motion since you've had your hand up, Jeff? No, okay.
I have another question, but it's not...
Okay, try to keep us in mind here. Okay. Is there any questions on the motion? All right, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Did you want to say something, Jeff? Yes. Motion stated, by the way. Yeah.
Would we have the ability to possibly explore transferring some of this housing money to Westchester? I mean to Tri-County, sorry.
We've enhanced the Tri-County housing program once, if not twice. Again, that's a topic of discussion that you can raise during the next session.
When we get into the spending plan, you can obviously articulate that opinion.
Yeah, and the Priority Setting Committee, when it meets in the fall and winter, when we do what's called scenario planning for the actual award, this is the first item we're going to take up. And one of the things we're going to look at is as Amber explained before, after working with the housing providers in Tri-County, does it look like they need a permanent enhancement? So that's definitely on the radar.
So, moving on with our agenda, we still have one more item and a brand new, very exciting new directive that we want to introduce to this council. And so, please continue, Danielle.
Actually, I think Micah?
Okay.
Yeah, and Donald's on the phone, Micah, in case you need him.
All right, so something really exciting happened this year where we were tasked with creating a service directive that really focused on transgender, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming people who fall under that umbrella. And we met for 6 meetings over 6 months and created a really robust set of recommendations for this council. And we created this set of recommendations along with a lot of help from our community Monique, who was the other co-chair, was really instrumental in helping bring people to the table who really needed to be to the table. One of the people is here, Phoenix, if you want to stand up, who really helped us and was there throughout the meeting. So give Phoenix a hand. Thank you, Phoenix. So some of the things I wanted to focus on out of this giant service directive is a few specific items that really came up time and time again. I'm going to piggyback off of what we were just talking about housing. And one of the things that was highly noted was safe and secure housing for transgender people. If you are not familiar, transgender people face immense discrimination when it comes to housing, especially if you're transgender and living with HIV. So we really wanted to create that as a really important part of this service directive to guide the work of this council. The other things that we really talked about were violence prevention, since violence seems to be, unfortunately, an everyday reality for many trans people. And so we definitely put that in there in terms of creating linkages to violence prevention and implementing broad-based education. This is bullet number 6 under program directives and service models. And it's basically to address stigma and discrimination that can be found through intimate partner violence and institutional and state violence. So it's pretty broad, but it really gives us a clear signal of where we need to be heading. Another couple of things that we really wanted to do was bring in training for all staff of these agencies that work under Ryan White. And that means not just training for patient-facing people, like providers or receptionists. It also means training for maintenance staff or janitors, security staff. That's where we find the highest incidences of tension between patients and the organizations and agencies. So we really wanted to put that in there specifically to state that all staff must go through these trainings. And when hiring trans people, we encourage these agencies to hire trans people, and we also want to encourage them to create models of professional development, because transgender people often are left out of these professional development spaces and really need this work and this information and resources to help them continue on and be successful. And then one last thing that I just wanted to point out was we wanted to bring together a lot of life skills planning. Again, transgender people often don't get this life skills coaching or teaching, and we wanted to really make sure that that was an important piece of this document. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but Melanie or Donald can totally come in. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Donald.
And I just want to once again thank everybody who's participating. I want to thank the co-chairs for bringing folks in to really ensure that we have the voice of the community.
Thank you, Donald. Does anybody have any questions about the service directive?
I'd like to make comments on it. I want to give recognition to Rob as well, because he really made me understand with all these acronyms that are coming out. We don't even know, how to train our staff. And it's important that we get that sort of training to our staff on how we welcome someone, how we treat someone, and I was telling him, my staff is lost. And they're asking me, like, what should I do? How should I refer to them as? And so they're confused. And it's like, let's make it, if we're going to break the stigma, let's get everybody educated on this. And thanks for your hard work and for your explanation, because you really enlightened me through what you said. Thank you.
I want to thank you for what you just said, because I think that we all want to assume, because we hear it so much, that we have certain tolerances, but really, if we look at ourselves just on being human, we bring our biases and judgments into a lot of things we do. I wanted to clarified, and I was told that it could be possible that for the general planning council, especially new people coming in the fall, that this planning council gets a specifically direct presentation of the things that we need to know so that we don't intentionally, I would never, or inadvertently, which is possible, give people ouches. Because the language and the landscape is changing very quickly, and I mentioned this at another time, that it's not just adults. We're looking at the landscape changing in elementary schools, and bathrooms changing, and children having the choice to come in and dress as they feel. And it is going to generate a lot of unsaid but very direct feelings and behaviors. So if we're going to be leaders, I think we need to start with making sure that we have a clear language understanding so that we're not unintentionally creating ouches.
Steve? I'm not gay, but I love my husband. But as a gay man, I am even confused. As a healthcare professional, I'm also confused and I can't keep up with the changes of what's taking place in the LGBTQ, non-conform, all these things. And so I think as healthcare workers, everybody needs to be trained, because I myself, as I said, I'm not gay. But I'm confused, and sometimes I don't understand all the terminology. And although I identify as he, him, his, and therefore all these other things, I still am struggling to understand what it means and how people feel and how would I interact. So I think it's not only it's for all healthcare workers, whether you're gay or not gay like me.
Okay, so we spent 4 years doing this, and last year we came up with a set of recommendations that will be added to our master directive. The recommendations also included training. We have a prototype training that we have offered to staff and planning council members already. We anticipate rolling that out further in the fall for the Tri-County Steering Committee and for those on this council and new council members who were not able to participate in that day-long training. So we are moving forward, and we are all learning as we move along. This particular service directive is intended to help HIV positive, transgender, non-binary, non-conforming, intersex individuals with the struggles that they face in their health care. And it took a lot of work to come up with this, and Micah and Donald and Monique headed a subcommittee, which is part of the Integration of Care Committee, which went through the Executive Committee and will come to you, to create this service. This is a new service. And we will take this to the Priority Setting Committee in the fall and attach funding to it. And it will become an RFP, and the RFP will become a contract, and then there will be places where people of these experiences will be able to go and have their issues addressed. But this is just the first. This is the very first of many steps in that progress, in that progression. And I would encourage you to support this service directive. It's been a fine piece of work, and we're all learning from this as we move forward.
So I know there are hands up, Eunice and Billy.
So I just had a question on the basic services that are provided. Is the expectation that we're looking at funding that will support navigation and behavioral health counseling? Is behavioral health counseling a part of this, or is it more navigation to services provided by others? I'm just trying, I want to make sure I understand the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening in the service.
So all in all, we really wanted the agencies that take funding from Ryan White to really reflect what's in the service directive in terms of their staffing and in terms of their training. But there are definitely, we really tried to, one of the key points is a linkage directory to mental health professionals and providers who are trans and intersex competent. So that was one of the key pieces, because we also recognize that not all agencies under the Ryan White Care Act can really do all the work that we're asking for them to do, but to be able to provide those linkages to those resources.
So would this end in new contracts, or would this be changed to? So this is, but what he's saying is different. So are we doing new contracts here and also changing the directives for the existing?
So I think this is a two-part process. So today, we're going to be voting with essentially the new service directive. But this will lead to conversations down the road around, do we change the master directive? But you're not voting on a master directive change today.
That's okay. Can I just also get clarity on what
your
the
question is-
services
yeah.
are for the
Okay.
new contracts?
I'm happy to do that. So this is a psychosocial support directive. It does not take the place of the current psychosocial support directive. It is like a complementary or another part of kind of like how we used to have transitional care coordination and care coordination under medical case management. There are direct services that are delivered through this, and so that will result, essentially, like this will result in an RFP and contracted services at multiple agencies that are delivering services that include psychosocial support, individual and group counseling. A large part of this directive is a referral house, which is synonymous with the psychosocial support counseling, where people can get linked to the other services that they need, whether it be credit repair, furthering their education, completing their education. And then parts of this that are kind of innovative and new that we haven't seen in any other directive include asking the agencies to pull together and compile the primary care physician, HIV care, and mental health physicians that are gender competent, so that there is a competent referral house to refer clients to, as well as reporting feedback on any trends that folks are seeing in terms of barriers to care, so that things can be addressed in a holistic and comprehensive manner and not just piecemeal. That way we can identify what's going on. Something that came out of our conversations with short-term housing is that people do see trends happening among populations, but there's nowhere to report it, right? And so that was a key piece of this. But yes, it is a service directive that will result in contracts.
So the contracts are going to be largely connected.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, the contracts are going to largely provide services that help navigate patients through, provide also behavioral health supports?
Yes.
Okay, so there will be a large behavioral health component to this, and then there's going to be this other additional component that captures information and supports training.
Yes, those paragraphs are on the second page, numbers
I just
4
wanted to
and
make
5.
sure I was understanding the
directive.
Exactly.
This is, can I say, and again, this is connected to the first statement I made. The statements that you're writing are not being clearly or defined or separated in ways that the logic to follow when you read them makes sense. For example, what you said right now, I clearly understand, but it doesn't read that way. What you just said, listen to me.
Everything
You
I
just
said is in this directive.
it doesn't read that way. The sequencing, it doesn't read that way. I read the whole thing, and twice, and 3 times. And I kept saying, those kind of questions that you're asking, it's like trying to map through the information and trying to sort of, I know what that means, I know what we do with the directive, how does it connect to the other. You don't have to do that when you're doing a directive. You have to get, this is what we've been saying for...
I feel like it's like if you read number 4 where it says provide individual and group support services that promote engagement and maintenance and care, that's really clearly written that you're providing services.
My question was more because I wasn't understanding it in the context of the conversation we were having, so I wanted to make sure what was written here was actually, I was reading it correctly because the rest of the conversation really didn't seem to have that point. So I just wanted to make sure I understood that. I didn't, but I agree it could be a bit more clearer, but also I see the points are there, and just in reading it, it was unclear to me. You have a lot here if you're really having that behavioral health component, because that's a part that we all struggle with in finding providers and finding services, and I think that's going to change who you're going to be directing this towards, and that's going to be a difficult thing to do, but that's for another conversation.
Again, the critique isn't about the good work, what it's meant to do. The critique is about reading the document and how to interpret the document, because it's not only us who will read the document, it's meant to be read by others to understand the process. And I know this is different from the RFP when you do that. But still, it begins here. And for example, when you talk, I've seen, I've been working with ILC before. And for example, simple separations like this one belongs to staffing. This is the point where we're talking about staffing, and this is what's going to happen with staffing. This is at the point where we discuss particular parts of the model. So labeling, saying this in regard to this is this one or two. This is in regard to this. These subdivisions make it clear to sequencing of the information. You just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's no understanding. Well, this 6 is actually about the staffing, or 5 is concerning the staffing, or 2 or 3 is concerning. You have to do that in documents to be able to follow that. Just 1, 2, 3 is not enough.
So all the questions you've asked all can be answered by reading this document verbatim. We can go with column 3 and we can read all through this document and your questions will be answered. Because part of the problem is it's hard to summarize.
It's not about, I read the document. I'm trying to tell you, I read the document.
I'm not questioning whether you read the document or not.
It is that
a lot of people here who have not.
read the document, the way you read the document. If there's a section of staffing, why don't you just label it? This is a section about staffing. And what do you expect to be done with staffing? Just put the label. It makes it clear.
I actually saw item 7 makes that is about staffing, it's item 7.
I know, put the name. This is about staffing.
Okay, so the labeling may be a little off, but I think the components are all in here. I see your hand up, Jeff, and I know Billy's been wanting to talk for a bit.
I don't know what I was going to say. But I just want to say that I think this is not a dead document. This is a living document. And this document starts in needs assessment, which we establish a need. Then it gets further defined when we get into OIC, integration of care. So some of these things that may not be caught here will be caught in the other document. And hopefully in the fall, we will have more transgender people who will come to these meetings and give output to it. So this is a living document. This does not mean this, and it is not a static document, and it's not as far as this document can grow. So this just means that some of the things that we're discussing now can be brought up further along the road.
So,
Can I just quickly respond? I just want to remind everyone that this document was developed with community voice at the front of the table, around the table, and is all throughout this document. And everyone who was around that table understood every single piece of this document. Am I correct, Phoenix? And so if we as the Planning Council, who have reviewed many service directives, don't understand pieces of the document and would like to propose that we change the format of how we write service directives, I think that's one thing. But in my opinion, as someone who was just got to witness an amazing process where community really took the lead, this document for me is really clear, and it spells out everything that we could put in here to address the barriers to care that are faced by persons of the TGI and BNC experience.
I just want to say, I was at every meeting but one. And so,
You're supposed to bring the peach cobbler.
they are not going to get this down. But anyway, I was at every meeting but one. And the thing about these meetings was that we had people in there from their community thank you, I'll tell with names, but as Melody said, so this is a document that just wasn't developed by staff. This was a document that was developed by the community, with community input. And like I said before, we hope that the community will be involved when the integration of care takes place. So this document is not going to just stay in this maiden void. It's going to have a lot of stuff. There's going to be a lot of conversations going on.
So a couple of things. I mean, I know there's two hands up. I think all the elements are in here. Maybe not organized still wants them, but if you look at the program directive and service model, and there's 7 different sections. I think it lays out in there what we want this to look like. Number 2, we haven't put a dollar price on this. So there's no RFP coming out tomorrow because there's not a penny being allocated to it, because that's going to be next year as part of our priority setting process. Katrina, you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, right, I guess comments on my way out the door, right? I would just really encourage people to think about passing this because it is community-centered, plus any delays that we have here, if this doesn't get approved at today's meeting, then it gets kicked back for discussion in September, and then it has to get rewritten, and it delays the funding process and the actual implementation of services to a population that we know needs support. So even if we don't have, everything perfect, there's steps for that down the line, but I really think that we need to, get to a place where we can approve this today so that we can actually start doing the work.
Jeff, you'd love having your hand up, don't you? Go ahead. Yeah. See, I'm cutting you off, yeah.
So, actually, I was going to say everything that Billy said, but I have a question about process. So, these are recommendations, and these are great recommendations. What's the process for fleshing this out in the fall, and that will result in some sort of request for proposals for, some or all of these services?
All of them.
Okay, well, all of them, but I mean, what's the process for developing the RFC?
This is the process.
Yeah.
This is the process where you vote on this directive, and it goes to the recipient to write the RFP.
So you guys write the RFP.
So this is actually, there was incredible contribution on part of the subcommittee, and it was I was very impressed with the process. But I do want to be clear that when you vote on this, this is the document from which we will write an RFP.
So,
but I will also say that I feel like the contents of this document will give us some very clear basis for an RFP that will provide services that have not been provided in the Brian White portfolio so specifically and clearly. And I fully support this document.
Hi. I just want to say, I totally agree. I think that formatting in general of our service directives can be confusing in this way. I think that's a more general point, that this kind of follows the format that we have for all of them. And I've seen them and been like, where we're editing them and we're like, what happened? Why didn't people get this word exactly right? But I think the service directive speaks to why, sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good, and it's amazing the amount of work that the subcommittee put in to get this together. And we spent our entire last meeting in IOC getting this ready to you so that we could move next year into discussing funding and then getting to the RFP process. So that being said, I'd like to move.
Thank you. I was going to say, as a chair, please do something.
Yeah, to move to approve this service directive for psychosocial support service directive for people of transgender, intersex, non-binary, and non-conforming experience.
Great, it's on the floor, we don't need seconds coming from the committee. There's a motion on the floor. Okay, lots of seconds, great. So, I'm going to call the question. Do we have a question on this motion?
No.
All right. All those in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We now do the first election.
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm really excited to be part of this process. And one of the things that the presenter had mentioned that really resonated with me is about ensuring that the agencies that will be providing these services are fully prepared to provide these services so that they have the training, they have the technical assistance down to training that the janitor receives. And I know that it's only one sentence in the directive, agencies are expected to facilitate professional. But I think that as we think about how we're going to move this forward, we should truly think about how we're going to work collaboratively with the agencies to ensure that they are prepared to provide these services as effectively and efficiently as possible. If that's to provide technical, the Department of Health providing technical assistance, then that's something that we should take into consideration.
Agent and Jen.
Microphone right here. I want to just take a picture with Gary, please.
He's not dying. That's the meeting. That's the meeting. He said, you know, when you're not saying goodbye, you're just going to drop dead at 4:59. Don't worry.
No, I might be here another 6 minutes. I don't want to miss my shot.
Go again.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what he said, because your point is an excellent point, and I think that any funding that comes out of an RFP that results from this should be directed to organizations that specifically serve its population. And a lot of those organizations may be small grassroots organizations that don't have the current capacity to build to handle a large multi-$100,000 contract potentially. Back in the day, you know, there was funding by the health department to provide capacity building and technical assistance to support new organizations that were just getting off the ground to provide HIV-related services.
I remember that was a long time ago, Jeff.
Yeah, but I think that it's needed to. I think it's needed to look at that again, because there's a lot of newer organizations that are being funded to provide specific services like this that don't have the capacity or might need this special assistance, and there's no money out there right now to help them.
You want to IOC or PSRA, Jeff? You're on PSRA, right? Okay.
So yeah, I did want to add that the Bureau of HIV has funded a capacity building contract to 5 organizations who are led by TGNB&C leadership, and that we've been building that capacity over the last several years, and some of those we hope will compete for this funding.
Just under agency eligibility, non-profit organizations with expertise in delivering gender-affirming care and experience with people of TGI, NB, NC experience living with HIV. Preference for agencies run and staffed by persons that identify as being of TGI, NB, NC.
I recognize that. I just want to make sure that they have the capacity, that we give them the support to be able to do that.
Great. I think, no, I'm not trying to set you down, but I think we all hear your message loud and clear, sir. Amanda, and then we're going to move on to the next business.
Just quickly, yeah, I second what Jeff said, and I wonder if there's, further down the line, if it could be put in for perhaps, because there are huge mega organizations who fulfill all that criteria, and they have the IT and the administrative capacity, you know, to do what Jeff's referring to. Perhaps we can add, like, for organizations with a budget under X amount of money. So we're assured that it's going to those grassroots groups where the most needy actually frequent, and not the big mega groups that usually get the funding. Barry.
Can I just say, I just hope that there's, in the RFP that comes from this, there's a portion that requires that the funded agencies work closely with their medical providers of the patients, because the medical providers look like they could be left out of this and not get supported themselves in providing better care too.
That, unfortunately, because we're bound by the service category defined by HRSA, this is psychosocial support, so it doesn't allow that clear connection to medical care that medical case management has. It's a requirement of HRSA that we sort of heard this directive in a specific confine of their definition. What you're talking about would be a separate or additional service category that it would have to roll out differently. It's because of policy that doesn't make sense, and I will recognize it doesn't make sense, but it is what we have to do with our line-wide funding.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more on the lines of that the fund agency could provide education and training and counseling to the medical organizations that are providing the care. You know, how to improve their.
So, unfortunately, Brett, the kind of conversation should have happened at IOC when we were developing the service model. We've already learned on it, and it's 2 minutes to 5, so I'm sorry, I'm going to shut the conversation down. I know there's at least one person in the audience who does want to provide public comment. So, with your permission or without it, I'm going to go to public comment, and I know Mark Misrock wants to speak.
Shall I go?
You're on.
Thank you so much for giving me a minute after you've been working so hard.
I'm sorry. Yes, you have a vote on the floor and it hasn't been taken. So you have to take the vote before you.
What vote? We already voted here. Where you been? Did you step out for a minute? Yes, we already voted. We voted, dear. Okay, please go, Mark.
Thanks so much. I know you've been working really hard, and I just want to take a minute to let you know about something that's coming up in September that I think is of vital importance and complements the programs that are funded under Ryan White and the CDC. It's an initiative that has been developed by the HIV, both the HIV care and prevention initiative, to address the employment needs and interests and opportunities of people both living with HIV and those at greater vulnerability to HIV in New York City. And I'm personally very proud to be associated with this project. It's culminating in a full-day, large-scale community employment information and resource event happening on September 18th. I have a ton of flyers with me. I really hope that you will help us make sure that everybody who might be interested and could benefit from this event gets to know about it. Just very quickly, what's going to happen there that day, in addition to makeup artists preparing folks for headshot photographs and everyone getting fittings and a professional wardrobe, we're going to have 9 workshops on a variety of important topics, including how do you go to work when you're on benefits and maintain your access to health care, economic stability, and housing. What are our legal rights and protections in the workplace for folks with a variety of barriers to employment? What are remedies that can be available? We'll have one-on-one legal consults all day. We'll have one-on-one benefits advisement all day. We'll have one-on-one career coaching. We are renting equipment for the day to have a computer lab with expert volunteers set up at each one to do resumes with people one-on-one. Help folks submit job applications. We're going to have close to 30 organizations that provide a variety of employment, training, education, legal, and benefits services, ready to talk one-on-one with the folks in a tabling session in the middle of the day. Probably leaving stuff out. But it would be a shame for someone who could benefit from this not to know it's happening. It's never happened anywhere in this country on this scale. Kudos to DOHMH for doing it. It may never happen again. So let's take advantage of it.
We will send that around on the listserv as well.
Thank you, Mark. Lisa, you have the last word.
On September 18th, it's Wednesday, September 18th, 9 to 5 at Baruch College Conference Center.
Okay, so the last word is that on behalf of the Consumer Committee, we are excited to say that we are going to be meeting with the subcommittee for the QI conference, and our topic being oral health. And Paul is going to be a great chairperson leading this directive. So if you have not been at the last Consumer Committee meeting, or if you're changing your mind, I believe our next meeting is August 6th. And please reach out, and we'd love to see you there.
Chairman.
If I could just give me 1 minute, I just wanted to remind people that in your folders, there's a flyer referencing a memorial service that's being held for Umberto Cruz. He was the former director of the AIDS Institute. He was also a member of the Planning Council and very active with regard to the benefits that we've made today. It's going to be held on August the 8th at the Schomburg from 3 to 5 p.m. It's a limited program, and we know a lot of people would like to speak. speak, unfortunately, due to time constraints. What we're asking, we want community voice. So you have an opportunity to have something included in a slideshow. It can be a personal message or from your agency. We're asking that you please send us an email to the attention of angela.rivera@health.ny.gov. It has to be no more than 100 characters, and if you can send it on a JPEG or a TIP to be included in a slideshow presentation.
Can you send that out, please?
Yes, it's in your packet.
Okay.
Send it out to the email.
I will instruct Mr. Clark to send that out. All right, you're okay. So, it is, I broke my rules, so it's at 5 o'clock and it's 5:04. We did some great work today. Enjoy your summer, and I'm sure we're all going to see Jan again at the next meeting.